Hello and welcome to Health and Wellbeing. I'm Liz Spate. Now, here is an image of normal skin. But here is what skin affected by a condition called solar keratosis looks like, which often presents itself as crusty or scaly lesions on the skin that won't heal. Now, don't panic because the condition is treatable and we have some expert advice to help you. Coming up on today's show, time to change your sunbathing routine, how to recognise the signs of sun damage, and advice for diagnosis and treatment. Well, joining me in the studio today is health expert Dr. Rob Hicks. Welcome along, Rob. Really great to see you today. Now, don't forget, this is a live show, so if you have any questions or comments for Rob at all, please use the box on the screen, click send, and it'll come through to us here in the studio. And we really do want you to get involved. We do want to hear from you. Now, Rob, there's been plenty of advice and warnings over the last 10 years or so about protecting yourself when it comes to protecting your skin against harmful UV rays. Is sun damage still a major problem? And at what age does the problem normally present itself?
Sadly, it still is a very major problem. We still see people who suffer sunburn. You only have to go out on a sunny day and you'll see people with the very red marks on their skin that really are going to hurt later on. In general practice, we see people with sun damaged skin, with the signs of sun damaged skin, the solar keratosis, for example. And every now and then we come across people who have a skin cancer, all of which is down to too much sun. We are getting better at looking after our skin.
Because we do know, don't we? Don't we?
We do know, but it's always that battle. Somebody says they feel better with a tan, or it's not going to happen to me, or I'm too young. And the bottom line is that the damage to the skin starts in childhood. Right. You get sunburned when you're, in your childhood years or in your teenage years, and that really sets you up for problems in later life. Saying that, you can damage the skin at any time in your life, and it's never too late, really, to start looking after your skin properly.
Right, okay. So we listen to the messages, we don't always hear them. What should we be doing to protect ourselves from the sun?
Well, I think the first thing is, to protect the skin from the sun by actually seeking the shade in the middle of the day. So we talk about finding the shade between 11 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. That's when the rays are at their most powerful. Using a good sun protection cream, at least factor 15.
Yes.
And being liberal with the application. Far too many people don't put enough on, and they don't put it on regularly enough when they're outside.
So you can't just put it on in the morning and then think, that's it, I'm done for the rest of the day.
No, if you think about it, in hot weather we sweat, so you're going to be wiping off the cream in that way. If you go in and out of a pool on holiday or the sea on holiday, it might get washed off. So these are the times when you need to reapply it. And think about sunglasses, a wide-brimmed floppy cap or hat, a peaked cap, and sleeves, again, to protect the skin. And one of the important things is, of course, not to burn. That's the important thing with regards to skin cancers.
So that's the main thing, is it burning? Is it? So if you don't burn, you should be okay?
No, the damage will still occur. And if you look at the signs, a tan, any level of tan, is saying that the skin is damaged.
Right.
So that's how the skin responds when it's damaged. If you look at wrinkles in the skin, you might have a friend who's actually only in their late 20s, but they look like they're in their mid-40s. That's probably down to the fact that they've got sun-damaged skin.
Right.
And so it's not just the wrinkles, but the premature aging. Then, of course, we've got the things like solar keratoses, these sort of rough, often very small areas of skin. I mean, they can be as small as a pinhead or as big as a centimetre or 2 in diameter. And they may be different colours. They may be red, pink, brown. They could be the natural skin colour. And they feel rough like sandpaper does. And what you find is people notice them first off when they're washing or putting cream on, and they think, oh, there's something not quite right there. And then they have a good old look and they see that there's this skin lesion, the solar keratosis.
Now we have some images actually that we can show you. Many people do have darker spots on their skin, sometimes known as liver spots. And how can they tell the difference between those and solar keratosis? Let's have a look at some of these images. We've got someone's head here, and we've got some sort of scabby bits.
Yeah,
is that it?
They're solar keratoses, and this is a very, very common place, obviously, that's exposed. I mean, these things develop on exposed areas of the body primarily. They can affect anywhere, but the areas that are often exposed to UV in any sort of weather, the scalp is the perfect example. The hands and the arms, the lower legs, the ear, you see there on the back of this gentleman's ear, that's the solar keratosis, the one right at the back there. And what's the area where people forget to protect? They don't put the creams on their ear. They might do everywhere else, but they forget their ears. So again, look out for these things on your friends and family's skin behind them, because of course they can't see these things.
Yes.
They may have been, with this gentleman, he may have been scratching at it, picking at it, he may have noticed it and thought, well, it's nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
But with the solar keratosis, what happens is that some of them disappear, but they come back. Some look like they're healing, but they never quite go away.
Right. So you know it's something a little bit different then, really.
Something that doesn't disappear within 4 weeks really deserves a checkup.
Yeah, okay. Another image here of hands. And of course your hands are always out in the sun, and even in the winter you don't tend to put sun cream on your hands, do you?
No, and I think, people focus in the summer about looking after their skin. They forget that they may go on holiday, or we might get some good weather in the springtime when they should be looking after their skin as well. And you see on this person's hand, there's a brown mark just back from the middle finger. Now that's what we call a liver spot, or actually more correct, an age spot, because it's got nothing to do with the liver whatsoever. It's just one of those.
Just looks like a liver, I suppose.
Yes. It's, and then you see the one that's sort of directly above it, below the ring finger there. That's likely to be a solar keratosis there. It's slightly more raised,
right?
And it looks crusty. It doesn't look like it's part of the skin. It looks like it's grown, on the skin, and that's really the marker. But I say to people, look, they are difficult even for very trained doctors to identify and distinguish. So if you're at all worried, come in and get it checked. No doctor's going to mind if they say, well, actually, there's nothing to worry about. They'd rather you come in, be reassured that it's all okay, or if it's not, and it is a solar keratosis, we can treat it.
Yes, we'll be talking about treatment a little bit later on in the show. But a lot of these photos are of older people. Is that when it normally presents itself?
The older you get, the more likely you are to develop a solar keratosis, purely because it's down to the amount of UV radiation exposure you've had over the years. So that might be because you're a sun worshipper, but we'll often see it because people's occupations have meant that they've spent a lot of time outdoors, farming, building trade, looking after gardens, for example. They may have spent lots of time doing hobbies and leisure pursuits, golf, cricket, bowls, walking, again when they're outside. And
in the winter or the autumn, you don't necessarily think about it, do you? But if you're out all the time in the sun, you're going to catch it, aren't you?
Absolutely right. I mean, people focus on, it's nice to hear that people do take note in the sunshine, but even on cloudy days, those UV rays can get through and cause you problems. So you always need to be aware and alert to what might be going on. And if you see any change in the skin that you can't 100% say, I know what this is and I know why this has happened, don't hesitate to get it checked out.
Okay, good advice then. And we've had some of your questions coming in. I've had one in from Peter. He sounds quite worried actually. He said, my girlfriend is obsessed with the sunbed. Surely she must be increasing her chances of long-term skin damage. What can I do to persuade her to stop it? Now, are sunbeds still dangerous? Haven't they filtered out all that dangerous stuff?
I think the problem is that anybody who exposes their skin to excessive amounts of UV radiation, whether that's from sunbeds or the sun itself, are increasing their risk of sun damage and the consequences. One of the reasons we focus on the solar keratosis is, although it's not a cancer, some of them have the potential to turn into cancer.
Right.
We don't know which ones are going to do that, so we recommend that they get treated. What he can do to encourage his girlfriend, I think, is probably go down the route of the wrinkles of the skin, and of the premature aging.
You'll look old, love, if you keep doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's we all would like healthy, glowing skin forever, but you're going to curtail that process if you spend a lot of time exposing yourself to UV radiation. So cut it down.
Yeah, okay. Or maybe use the fake tans are very good.
I mean, what I say to people, if you really, really want to tan, fake it. And there's so many options these days. Gone are the days when you're going to be left streaky and smelling like old cabbage.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an option, isn't it? So maybe suggest that instead, because we all do like to have a bit of a tan, because we all feel better and you do look healthier, don't you?
I think people feel better. The thing is, they say they look healthier, but of course, as we say, a tan means the skin is damaged. It's your skin crying out saying, please don't do this to me. I'm hurting.
Yeah, okay. Another question in from Sylvia. She said, can doctors look at your DNA to see if you're at high risk? That's a good point, actually, because different skins, different, blue eyes, fair skin.
You can do, and there are some genes that have been identified that say that somebody's more at risk of certain skin cancers like malignant melanoma. But bottom line is, you don't need to do a DNA test, you can just look at a person. So the fairer the skin they have, the fairer the hair or red hair, and the more freckles they have, the more moles they have, they're greater their risk of problems in the future. You know, the more likely they have had a lot of, you ask them questions, have you spent a lot of time working abroad? Have you spent a lot of time in hot weather? Have you spent a lot of time on outdoors getting sunburned? You know, have you got a tan and wrinkly skin? It all adds up to increasing the risk, and that's what I would look at and discuss with a patient.
Right, okay. So if you're fair skinned, well, you know you shouldn't go out in the sun anyway, really, but if you are dark skinned, can you still get solar keratosis?
Yes, you can. You can. It's one of these myths that you can't get damage. You're less likely to suffer damage, but it's still possible. And so every skin colour, every skin tone needs to take great care.
Okay. On that sort of same topic, really, question in says, I think my grandfather had this condition. Am I more prone to it as a result? So again, a sort of DNA question.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, the solar keratosis is not inherited, but the genes that increase the risk of skin damage, so being fair-skinned, lots of freckles and the colour of the hair, obviously you do inherit. So if you've got somebody in the family who, if you are following that pattern, then you are at risk of sun damage, but the solar keratosis isn't directly inherited. No.
Right, okay, well that's good news. So it's not too late to protect yourself and stop yourself.
It's a clear message, protect yourself.
Yes.
If somebody in your family's got it, they've done something, too much sun, think about that, protect your own skin.
Yeah, okay, well thanks very much for that information. Now we're talking about solar keratosis, and we're going to be talking about how to recognise it and how to treat it a little bit later in the show, so stay with us. Now, if you've just joined us, we're talking about a condition known as solar keratosis with Dr. Rob Hicks. Now, more of your questions coming up, but first, people are often concerned about moles they have on their skin and ways in which their size and colour changes. Is this an area related to solar keratosis or something completely different?
Well, it's related in that the damage to the skin is down to too much UV. And it's very important still for people to keep an eye on moles. They're looking for changes such as change in size, colour, shape. If they start to become crusty or itchy or bleed, they should promptly get medical advice. What's very interesting about the solar keratosis is that in a recent survey, around about 84% of people asked had no idea what a solar keratosis is.
Right.
And the bottom line is...
I hadn't heard of it actually until the show, I have to say. So, you know...
You're in the majority, and this is why it's so important to raise awareness, because a lot of people see these spots and or these rough areas and they just think it's part of getting older.
Yes, well that's it, because older men do tend to have these kind of scabby bits on their head and what have you, and you just do think that's what your skin does as it ages.
And for some people it's not a solar keratosis, it's a change, maybe it's a form of dermatitis or eczema. But the important thing is that we just don't know which ones of these solar keratoses may progress, may change into the squamous cell carcinoma, which is why it's important to recognise them, get them assessed, and then get them treated.
Okay. Question from Darren Mays. He says, I have a lot of moles on my back. What sun factor should I use on them? Well, it sounds like he's aware, which is a start, isn't it? So what should he be doing to protect those?
I think he should protect those like he protects the rest of his skin. You use at least a factor of 15 and higher if you think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
You cover your back and the rest of your body with sleeves and a top when you're out in the sun. You go into the shade in the middle of the day, and the important thing about moles on your back is you can't monitor them yourself easily.
No.
So you need somebody to keep an eye on them. In days gone by, we would have said, well, get somebody to trace the mole so you can watch to see if it's changing shape or its outline. Nowadays, of course, with digital photography, you can do that yourself.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And particularly if he's got a lot of moles and if he's concerned, it might be worthwhile him having them checked every 6 to 12 months by his doctor, providing they're not changing in any way. If they change, that should prompt a new consultation to have them checked.
Right, okay. Now we've all heard about melanoma, but what's non-malignant melanoma then?
The malignant melanoma is the melanoma type of skin cancer, but you get non-melanoma skin cancers. The two major types are the basal cell carcinoma and also the squamous cell carcinoma. All three types caused by excessive UV exposure.
Right.
The squamous cell carcinoma tends to affect people in older age, as does the basal cell carcinoma from cumulative exposure to sun. We see these people, people who live a lot of their lives outdoors, whether it's through work commitments or through leisure commitments. Again, they affect the exposed parts of the body, lots on the face, sometimes on the ears and on the scalp as well. And of course the squamous cell carcinoma is the type of skin cancer that the solar keratosis may turn into if it's not treated.
Right, so we've got a question from Sandra on that actually. She says, is solar keratosis life-threatening?
Well, solar keratosis is not life-threatening.
Right, even though it could turn into cancer?
Well, even if it turns into cancer, the type of cancer, the squamous cell carcinoma, tends not to be life-threatening.
Right.
However, if it's left, sometimes the surgery needed to treat it can be quite disfiguring.
Right.
And therefore affect a person's quality of life. But I hasten to add, just because the solar keratosis isn't life-threatening doesn't mean that you should leave it alone, ignore it and think it's nothing to be bothered about. I would always suggest getting it treated so that you reduce that risk, you eliminate that risk of the opportunity of it turning into a squamous cell carcinoma.
Into something worse. Okay. Now, how often should we be checking our skin for signs of change? Is it something people tend to do in the summer more, isn't it? When they traditionally spend more time out in the sun. When should we be checking our skin?
I think that's down to an individual, really. But I think it should be throughout the year. And probably you should check your moles and your skin, at least once a month if you've already got moles. I mean, you probably don't want to be checking every day because that can become a little bit obsessive. But,
yes. Yeah.
But generally speaking, we do see our skin a lot when we look in the mirror, when we're washing or applying moisturiser or indeed sun cream. We feel our skin, and so we'll often notice, particularly with the solar keratosis, that we feel it. We feel that rough sandpapery texture before we actually even see it.
Yeah.
Either because the colour is similar to our skin colour, or because it's so small.
Yeah. So you don't always look at the back of your arms, and you don't always look at those.
And that's why we should rely on our the members of our family or our friends who do get to see the backs of our arms, the backs of our heads,
really.
And stuff. And for them not to feel awkward about saying, look, do you know you've got this spot there? If the person knows and it's been checked, fine. But it might be actually that they're identifying it for the first time, which could be very, very important.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're talking a little bit now about treatments and the importance of early diagnosis. And we have a question in from Frances. She says, is there a way to get rid of sunspots? Is there a cream or something? What is the safest way to do? So at sunspots or age spots, that again, it's sun damage. Can you get rid of them?
It's very difficult to get rid of the age spots, like we saw earlier, on the gentleman's hands. I mean, basically, sometimes you can use a sort of a cover-up. Is probably the best option for those. Obviously, you want to stay out of the sun and protect your skin so that they don't get worse and you don't get more of them. Solar keratosis is relatively easy to treat. They can be frozen with liquid nitrogen, much as we use to treat warts on the skin and verrucas. They can be sort of scooped out using a local anaesthetic, or nowadays we have the benefit of creams and gels that the person can put on to the solar keratosis themselves.
Okay, well that sounds a bit of an easier option, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean it depends on the individual really, what they're happiest doing. But it's nice to have the choice, and the most important thing is these things can be treated.
Yes, well, which is good news, really, isn't it? So don't be frightened. Go to your doctor about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question in from Giddy Limits. We are aware that the incidence of skin cancers increase with age. What are the range of options available, or is surgery the only option for skin cancer?
And surgery is one of the major options. Some people need radiotherapy. Some people need chemotherapy as well, and of course some people may need the more extensive treatments if one of the concerns with the dangerous form of skin cancer, the malignant melanoma, is it spreads around the body. So people may need chemotherapy if they've had a cancer that spreads. But again, malignant melanoma and other skin cancers, the sooner they're diagnosed, the earlier they're diagnosed, the better the chance of a complete cure.
Right.
One of the problems with these cancers is people ignore them.
Yes.
And they don't come soon enough.
They hope they'll go away,
yes,
and they don't.
Yeah. And men tend to be far worse than women at this, because men tend to sort of bury their head in the sand and they think, oh, it's nothing to worry about, or they are terrified that it is something serious, and then they just say, well, I'm not going to go anywhere near a doctor, which is not the right thing to do.
Yeah, but solar keratosis certainly can be treated.
Easily treated.
But if you do find it, try and get it treated early.
Yeah, get along, get it sorted. The sooner it's done, it's sorted.
Yes.
And the less worry you need to have.
And are you likely to get more if you have, right?
Yes, yes. Even if you've had one treated, or even if one has gone away on its own, as many of them do, many of them disappear on their own. They do come back. It's sometimes in the same place if they've gone away on their own, or if you've had one treated, you may find that you've got another one.
Right.
People often find once they've found one,
right, they're
they think,
popping
oh,
up
I've
all
got
over the
another
place.
one.
Yes.
Oh, what's that? I've got another one.
Because they can recognise it.
Because they're now familiar, and they're thinking, well, actually, that thing that I've been scratching at the back of my head, I've had checked now, and it is a solar keratosis. And the doctor may have said, well, look, you've got one there.
Yes.
There. So they often cut. You often get a handful of them.
Yeah, but it can be treated, so don't panic.
Yeah. It's about not being frightened. It's getting down there, seeing your doctor, getting the treatment sorted.
Okay, well, Dr. Rob Hicks, thanks so much for coming in and talking us through that. And if you want further information, you can visit the website, which is sundamagedskin.co.uk, and just be safe in the sun. We all love to get out in it, don't we? But put on your hat, slap on your sunscreen, and you should be safe. Okay, well, thanks to all of you who sent your questions in, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.